You're fired. Two words employees never want to hear. But this next guest took what could have been a devastating, career crippling experience and turned it into a string of opportunities. In her new book, From Fired to Fabulous, former executive Beth Solomon writes about embarrassing dismissals in her career and how she used those moments to catapult her into better jobs and higher pay.
Here to share more about her professional fiascos is Beth Solomon. Welcome, Beth, to Rising. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks so much. Glad to be here and glad to be here and not be getting fired.
Us as well. Well, listen, there are going to be a number of federal employees come January 20th of next year that are going to be looking for a new job. What are some of your top key advice points for some of these folks that are looking for their next opportunity?
Well, that's right. And the president has said that those employees, for instance, who don't come back to in-person work in the office, that they are great candidates, that they will be fired. And that's up to 10% of the federal workforce. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, which could obviously be devastating. The thing is, getting fired is extremely difficult. It's humiliating, embarrassing. I remember many times just the shock and awe of it. And you feel like you're a disappointment to your family. You feel like you're a failure. The hardest part is just dealing with that difficult, the worst day of your career is what it always feels like, and worrying about your finances and your family and what's going to happen next. My view is that it's always really a good opportunity. It just doesn't feel like it in the moment. And what you have to do immediately is reach out to your contacts and start talking with people. You need a public story that, in this case, if it's true that there will be this kind of slash and burn, and who knows, I mean, we remember Elon Musk bringing a sink into Twitter, meaning let this sink in, most of you are going to get fired. So this could happen, and if those employees do get the axe, at least it's not going to be for performance. It's just going to be a phenomenon out of their control, but they need to be ready for it. And frankly, we all need to kind of future-proof our careers by networking, by being prepared, by being financially ready. Because these bumps and bruises are going to happen. And the truth is, the workplace is getting more transitory because of technology. It's a fact of life.
If people do get fired for performance, let's say in other cases outside of the one that we're talking about with the upcoming trimming of the federal government, what would be their story that they should present to a potential employer after getting fired? How do they talk about their departure from that previous job?
Well, that's a great question. So I say there's a private story and a public story. Your private story is what you tell your friends. Those bozos, I can't believe they did this. They're so wrong. They're so stupid. They were unfair. That's your private story. Tell it to your friends. Tell it to your family. They're going to support you. You need to vent. You need to feel the grief and the frustration of it. But then you need a public story. And the public story is very brief. It doesn't assign blame. And it moves the conversation to the future, to a topic you want to discuss. So you heard the private story you might tell. The public story version of that might be, it was a good run at the trade association. Time ran out. They decided to go in a different direction. It's a great opportunity for me. So what do you see in the marketplace happening in our industry? So you want to move the conversation from what just happened and make it brief. You're not assigning blame, and then move it back to the topic of what happens next. I'm open to opportunities. What do you see? And can I send you my resume?
Beth, I love this book, From Fired to Fabulous, and I think one of the key points in it is sometimes just employing good old-fashioned manners in terms of engaging with your network with potential employers. Why is that so important, and why is that seemingly sometimes lost with these kind of generations that are coming up behind us?
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out because Generation Z has a big problem here. And they were caught in the pandemic. Many of them did remote schooling, they did remote working. And the truth is, they don't know how to interact with adults. They don't understand the expectations of the workforce. So they are getting fired in record numbers. It's really a national crisis. Something like 10% of managers say they don't want to hire Gen Z, and another 10% said they will always avoid it. So we need to do something about that. So I do think, and the reason it's not happening is employers think this should be happening by universities, and universities are saying no, we don't do that. We're teaching, learning and information, not human behavior. But you're right. A good practice of your career that everybody should be doing is build your network, help other people. Networking is not just contacting, making new acquaintances to help you move forward in your career. It's also being ready to help other people because people get fired, people lose their jobs, people get passed over all the time. And part of a sound career strategy is building your network of contacts and being helpful to people when they're in trouble. Because when you're in trouble, and it inevitably happens, not just in Washington, but in every industry, you want to be able to reach out to those people and say, you know what, I got fired. Can we have a cup of coffee? And then to your point, you want to treat those contacts and certainly people you're interviewing with respect. I say send an email thank you note right after the interview and follow up with a handwritten note. Good manners are so valuable, and they do magic in professional life. So I hope everybody thinks about this because it's so simple. It's something you can teach yourself. And then I hope we really address this crisis that we have with Gen Z. We can't afford to have a lost generation in the workforce.
I'm glad you mentioned the handwritten note after an interview. That was something that I learned in one of my first internships that has been incredibly valuable to me in my career. In your book, you share some personal stories about times where, unfortunately, you were let go from your job. Can you share one of those stories with us and how you leveraged what could have been a really low point into a better opportunity?
Yes, indeed. I was fired so many times. I've been fired more than anybody I know, which is why I decided, wow, there's a story in all these terminations and pink slips. So one time I was the CEO of a very small trade association in Washington, and it was the springtime. It was budget time. My chairman, vice chairman, and treasurer wanted to meet with me, and I thought, oh, great. I bet they're going to give me a raise because it was like an overturned car in a ditch. This organization, it was in a sea of red ink. The IRS was writing letters like, you are about to lose your nonprofit status. The accountant had gone to Florida and nobody could contact her, so nobody knew how much money the organization had. But I got to work. I was the new CEO. I basically opened my laptop in a Starbucks and eventually hired a team of great people, and we turned it around and turned the revenues around. So I really thought in this meeting, like, this is going to be good news. And I had like bagels and muffins and coffee and tea. They came in. I said, oh, what would you like? And the treasurer said, shut the door, Beth. And I thought, oh, that's abrupt, but he was kind of a tough New Yorker. So I jumped up and shut the door to the conference room. And then the chair was a small woman with curly hair. She pulled this stack of papers out of her briefcase and she started reading from it. And like her hands were trembling, like the papers were flapping so loudly. It was like birds' wings that you could hear. And she started to read and she said, the board of directors has decided to terminate your employment effective today. On and on. We decided to go in a different direction. You can clear out your desk now, or we can pack up your things and ship them to you. Do you have any questions? She said. And I just sat there like, you're in complete shock and you're thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. What am I going to do? I can't believe this is happening. Is this a movie? And so I said, I do have a question. Why? Why? That's my question. And they looked down and they looked at the ceiling and they said, we've decided to go in a different direction. And I said, well, was it anything I did? And they said, we've decided to go in a different direction. And so I was so shocked, and I had this new team of young people, and I said, well, could I just talk with my team, because I just don't, I want to be able to explain this to them, and I don't want them to feel the shock that of this. And they said, your team has left the building. So they had this all planned out. Now, this was 18 months after I started the job. They ended up paying me for a full 2 years, including several health insurance. So had I known up front that I would work for 18 months and be paid for 2 years and essentially have 6 months to figure it out and be paid, I would have said, absolutely, where do I sign? I just didn't realize at the moment I was kind of a turnaround agent. I was the change agent, but I probably wouldn't have been a good fit, just like, managing a kind of a static place. And so, I realized then it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I had plenty of time. I like redesigned my bedroom, and I got a lot of things done in my house, and I ended up with a great series of new jobs. And it wouldn't have happened unless I had been fired. I did worry about, it wasn't something I had done. And I talked, and you can torture yourself with this. You replay the conversations. When did it go wrong? When did I get on the wrong side of him or her? Was it that, thing I reported that, but my view is, don't do it to yourself. Give yourself time to grieve. You may need some wine or other things. Give it a few days.
Yeah, lots of wine
Think
for
of it
sure.
as it was lots of wine for me.
Lots of wine is always a good remedy.
Amen.
Beth Solomon, thank you so much for joining us on Rising today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
You too.
All right, that's going to actually do it for us today on Rising. As always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.